Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Grathitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaita Mritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvamanusandathami Bhagavad Gītā Bhavadveshinim Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sangapadakramam Panishadaihi Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyanavasthita Tadgatena Manasa Pashyanti Yan Yoginaha Yasyantanna Vidussura Suraganaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha. So we completed up to the 16th verses. Evam pravartitam chakram nanuvartayati hayah aghayurindriya ramah maugham parthasya jivati. हे पार्थ है अर्जुन, यह एवं प्रवर्तितम चक्रम न अनुवर्तयति यह. A person who does not live in this manner here in this life, according to the cosmic wheel that is already set in motion, aghayuhu is the one who lives in sin, indriyaramaha, given the pleasures of the senses, mogam partha jivati. He partha, he lives wastefully. Lord Krishna says here that if we live the life in keeping with the chakra of the order that is set in motion, then our life becomes a life that is lived usefully. On the other hand, if we live a way of life that is in violation to the obtaining order, then it's a life lived wastefully. And for that reason, in last number of verses, Lord Krishna revealed what is the nature of that harmony or the order which keeps that whole wheel of universe or the wheel of motion going. What happens if we do this? If we live a life that is in keeping with the obtaining harmony, and Lord Krishna said that harmony is what we call yajna. That harmony is that very spirit or the spirit of sacrifice, spirit of self-offering. Of course, when we hear this word sacrifice, it does create some reaction. Some people have allergy for this word sacrifice, also. And therefore, we need not use that word. If you like the word worship, offering, that also is okay. I like to use the word sacrifice for I don't know what reason, but sacrifice does have connotation of suffering and things like that. That is not what is meant by sacrifice. So word sacrifice is used in the Vedic context of performing those sacrificial rituals which are really the rituals of worshipping gods. And what is done traditionally is that you light the fire in an altar and invoke gods in those fires and make your offerings in the fires which are supposed to be the offerings made to gods. So what is meant by sacrifice in the Vedic, the terminology is worship. Sacrifice means worship. But it always involves offering something. Worship always involves offering something. Elsewhere in Bhagavad Gītā, Lord Krishna says that, may you offer me something. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati. Whether it's just a leaf, or a fruit, or water, or whatever little, or a flower, just offer it. So, when my devotee makes an offering as humble or as insignificant as this, the point is what is offered is not very important as much as the way it is offered. Bhaktya prayachati, as long as this offering is done with devotion. So really speaking, it is I who is offering myself. And whatever external object is placed at the feet of the Lord merely symbolizes the fact that I am offering myself. I am offering my ego, which is what comes in the way between myself and the Lord. What is ego? Nothing but a bunch of all these likes and dislikes, a bunch of various demands, a bunch of various fears and insecurities, various notions and conclusions. The summation of all of this is what we call ego. And it is these notions, all these conclusions, those insecurities, so these are the things that deprive me of enjoying the reality of my own self and the reality of the universe. And therefore, they are the obstacles. So what we call sacrifice is nothing but sacrificing or offering all those things which are of the nature of obstacles to the manifestation of my own truth. As we said, in nature, in reality, I am the wholeness. And what we want is that wholeness should become evident in our life. At this time, it is somehow clouded or obstructed by this cloud of likes, dislikes, attachment, aversion, pride, arrogance, and various things. And so these obstacles we want to get rid of, and that is what we want to offer. In fact, what we can offer to the Lord is nothing but garbage which is in there, that's all. Because what can I offer? Something that belongs to me. But what belongs to me? Coming to think of it, nothing truly belongs to me, inasmuch as whatever I think belongs to me also is only given to me. I can be said to be the possessor of something, but not necessarily the owner of something. That being the case, when I say that this thing is mine, that mindness or the sense of ownership is nothing but a notion. It is not a reality. It is like going to a temple, and there is a very beautiful garden outside the temple. I pluck a flower from that garden which belongs to the temple, and I go into the temple and offer that flower at the feet of the Lord. I have made an offering of the flower that came from the garden of Lord Himself. And similarly, whatever it is that I offer to the Lord, in terms of any material things, all of that really comes from the garden of the Lord. But no, Swamiji, it has come from my bank account. But there is also garden of the Lord. How can you call it, it's my property? I made it by my ability, by my intelligence, by my skill. But even that ability, intelligence, skill also is only plucked from the garden of Lord. No, it is I worked hard. The intellect may be given to me, but I worked hard to cultivate it, and I became an engineer, a doctor, or a lawyer. But the potential of learning also was given to you, and the potential of working hard also was given to you. And therefore, everything is given to us, which should not be frustrating, it should be nice, it should be relieving, that is fine. That, as I said, I am enjoying a grace. And to call something mine is just stressful. In fact, all we can offer to the Lord are all our stresses, that's all. Anything that causes stresses, that is what is to be offered. The sense of ownership always causes stress. So when I place something at the feet of the Lord, all I am doing is renouncing my sense of ownership, which is a notion to begin with. And therefore, what the renunciation that Vedanta talks about is really a renunciation of notions and nothing else. We have nothing else that we own that we can renounce anywhere. We can renounce something that belongs to us, and all that belongs to us are a bunch of notions. And therefore this process of offering, you call it sacrifice, you call it worship, you call it, is nothing but a process of getting rid of all these notions which cause stresses, insecurities, likes, dislikes, offering all of that at the feet of the Lord, and thus slowly removing the obstacles towards the manifestation of wholeness, which is my nature. In that process, my wholeness starts becoming evident. Ultimately, I own up that wholeness totally. So that is why Lord Krishna describes in the verses 17th and 18th. The person who has lived this way of life, who has thus brought to total manifestation the wholeness or fullness which is his or her nature. And how is that person? So that is described in the next two verses, 17th and 18th. So the weekend students will find a different text today. It is not Viveka Chudamani, but it is Bhagavad Gītā, chapter 3. It is continuation of our classes, which I hope you will find all right. Yastvatmaratirev syat atmatraptascha manavah atmanyeva cha santushtah tasya karyam na vidyate naiva tasya krutenarthah na kruteneha kaschana न चास्य सर्वभूतेषु कश्चिदर्थव्यपाश्रयः यस्तु आत्मरतिः एव स्यात् आत्मतृप्तश्च मानवः आत्मनि एव च सन्तुष्टः तस्य कार्यं न विद्यते. Yastu, whereas Yaha, the person, Atmaratihi, one who delights in the self. Atmatruptaha, the one who is satisfied with the self. Atmanievacha santushtaha, one who is contented in the self. Tasya karyam na vidyate, for that person nothing remains to be done. So this is one description of liberation. Tasya karyam na vidyate, for that person nothing remains to be done. How does that sound for liberation, Nothing remains to be done. In a society that is very active, this doesn't sound like very exciting, Nothing remains to be done. That must be a very dull life. When we say that nothing remains to be done, means that he is free from compulsion of having to do something. Put it this way. Because in the beginning, Lord Krishna described an ordinary person. When he said that not even for a moment an ordinary person can sit quietly. Because everybody suffers from a sense of discomfort. There is something within me that compels me to do something and therefore does not allow me to sit quietly with myself. This is the nature of an ordinary person. With reference to that, the wise person is described. Tasya karyam is that which has to be done. The word karya, kru means to do, and karya, that which has to be done. Meaning which I feel compelled to do, which I feel obliged to do. Not doing which will leave me uncomfortable, means, either uncomfortable or with a sense of loss. So, therefore, today we have a list of a number of things which need to be done. If they are not done, then I will be incomplete. If they are not done, I will feel that I am insecure, I am unsatisfied, I will not be happy if they are not done. And therefore, today there are a number of things that I find have to be done in order that I feel good, I feel happy, I feel secure, and not doing them, I will feel other way around. Therefore, I am compelled to do. If I don't do something, Swamiji, what will happen, if I don't go to work? What will happen if my son doesn't get admission? What happens if I don't get promotion? What happens if this car is not repaired? What happens if this is not done? What happens if I don't wake up in the morning at that time? What happens if I don't catch that train? What happens if I don't catch... You know what will happen? A lot of things will happen. That I will be deprived of something. I'll be unhappy. I'll miss something. I will lose something. I will not get something that I desire. And therefore, most of the things that we do because we are obliged to do, or we are compelled to do, or we are required to do, because if we don't do them, then we stand to lose something, or if we don't do them, then we will not gain something that is desirable to us. So all what I do is either to acquire something that is desirable to me, or to prevent a loss of something that is desirable to me. What I do is either done to acquire something that I want, or to get rid of something that I don't want, or to keep something that I want, or keep away something that I don't want. All the time my actions are nothing but fighting with the realities of life. Things want to come, I don't want them to come. Things want to go away, I want to hold on to them. See, lot of things that we are doing. The thing has its own nature. Whatever comes has a nature of going. But I want that certain things that I want should come and not go away. And also, the things that are not there have a nature to come. I wish that things that I do not want should not come. Thus, I want to in fact interfere in the process of life. See, with our action, you know what we are doing? With the action that we perform, more often than not, we want to manipulate the realities of life. We want to interfere in the natural process of life because the things of the world have their own way of things. Things come to me and then go away from me. What comes goes, and what is away may come near. What is near may go away. Do I allow them to, do I let them behave the way they want to behave? Do I give them the freedom? I do not give them the freedom. I want that things should behave or should act as I want them. And therefore, there is a need on my part to manipulate things. There are certain things that I believe are desirable to me, and therefore, if they are there, I somehow drag them and bring them here. There are certain things that are here that are undesirable to me, and therefore, I push them away. I push away things, I pull things. Whether they want to be pushed or pulled, I do that. And this is what causes stress. Whenever we do something that goes against the nature of something, there is going to be a stress. So life of an ordinary person is nothing but a struggle. Tasya karyam na vidyate. This wise person does not struggle anymore at all. He lets things the way they are. He lets them wherever they want to be. If they want to be there, fine. If they want to be here, there also is fine. Swamini, how this is miserable? If this is like this, how will there be progress? There are a lot of problems, This kind of a person, who does not interfere, who does not take action, who does not want to change things, who doesn't want to transform, looks like a person who is unproductive. But imagine yourself that you are comfortable with the way things are. Somebody sitting there, fine. Standing there, fine. Talking, fine. Not talking, fine. Coming, fine. Not coming, fine. With you, fine. Not with you, fine. Yours, fine. Somebody else's, fine. Suppose, Swamiji, this doesn't sound possible, but suppose I was comfortable with the way things are, where they are, how they are, whose they are. I do not demand that they be different from what they are, they be different from where they are, they be different from how they are. Here when thing is cold, I want to heat it. Something is hot, I want to cool it. Something is spicy, I want to remove the spice. Something is bland, I want to spice it. Something is in there, I want here. I keep on all the time, I don't say you don't do that, but this is what we do. We do not accept the things as they are. We always need to, in India particularly, the fresh vegetables look so wonderful, when they are on the table, when they are cut, By the time they are cooked and when they come to a plate, you don't know what it is. I can't accept them as they are. I must change them, I must crush them, do something or other, pound them, spice them, boil them, fry them, and convert them to my, then I feel this is a wonderful vegetable. Nobody knows what it is. And this is what we do with everything. Not only with vegetables, but with everything. With people also. We do that. With everything we do that. And we want to mold them, twist them, turn them, manipulate them until we believe that they are now agreeable to us. They are what I want them to be. But after 5 minutes, my idea changes again. I start redoing something. We have to think about our life. And it's not funny at all, Most of our energy is just wasted in trying to do things, and trying to change things that need not be changed at all. Because we cannot enjoy things as made by God. And therefore, we must necessarily change them, transform them, convert them, manipulate them, do something. This person does not manipulate anything. Agate swagatam kuryat, gachantam na nivaret. If something comes to him, he welcomes it. Something wants to go away, he blesses it. He is not indifferent. He doesn't aversion for anything. He is not indifferent to anything. It's not that he doesn't care for anything. It's that he wishes everything well as to what thing wants to be. He gives freedom to everybody. He gives freedom to everybody and freedom to everything. And then he also enjoys freedom. So in these two verses, Lord Krishna describes the person who enjoys freedom, or whose wholeness has become totally evident, become a reality of his life. And that wholeness is described by Lord Krishna in this way: Yastu Atmaratihi evasyat, one who revels, one person who delights in himself. Normally for delighting myself, I always have to think of some other things that I like, then I am delighted. But here he is delighted with himself. He is satisfied himself. Usually I get satisfied when I get something that I want, then I am satisfied. And he is contented within himself, contented when I enjoy or eat something that I like. So usually when I eat food that I like, then I have a sense of what we call satisfaction, trupti we call it. He is trupta hai. He is satisfied with himself, content with himself, delighted with himself. These are the three stages of what we call 3 degrees of happiness. In Vedanta, they talk of happiness in 3 degrees. Intensity is in 3 stages, let us say. First is the happiness that I feel when I think of something that I like. This very thought makes me happy. I remember as we were children, certain festivals are coming up. Then I know that they're going to prepare some good food at home. They're going to make some sweet laddus, sweet balls. I love them. I used to love them that time. But that's going to be in the evening. That fest function is going to be in the evening. But from morning, I think of laddus, right from the morning. I'm happy. Just very thought makes me happy. That is called delighting in something. So, for me to feel delighted, it is necessary for me to think of something that I like. Then I come home from the school with all enthusiasm because today there is going to be laddu. And then of course you don't get it right away, then the puja is being performed. You have to go through a lot of things, So they perform the puja and then, it takes its own time. Ultimately it comes in your plate. Wow, it has come to my plate. Now my happiness has become more intense. And then when I take a piece of that laddu and put it in my mouth, then I am ecstatic. That is the highest degree of happiness. So this is how they talk of happiness in 3 stages. Happiness that comes to me when I think of something that I like. That's called delighting. Then that happiness becomes intensified when that thing becomes mine. That is called the contentment. And then the happiness that ultimately becomes most intense when I enjoy it. That is called the satisfaction. The rati, santushti, tushti and trupti. Rati, tushti, trupti. Some of you who may have studied Taittiriya Upanishad may know the Priya, Moda and Pramoda. These 3 vrittis are talked about. But anyway, delight, contentment and satisfaction. Delight, contentment and satisfaction. An ordinary person requires the objects of the world, he requires company of other people, he requires a lot of things in order for him to be delighted, in order for him to be contented, in order for him to be satisfied. Whereas this person just needs himself. What does he need to feel delighted? Himself. What does he need to feel contented? Himself. What does he need to feel satisfied? Himself. Tasya karyam na vidyate, there nothing remains to be done for him. Because, whatever we do because either we want to be delighted, or we want to be contented, or we want to be satisfied. So all that we do is prompted by a need to be delighted, a need to be contented, or a need to be satisfied. This person finds himself to be delighted with himself, contented with himself, satisfied with himself. How come? Because that is the true nature of everyone. He is in fact the happiness, he is in fact the wholeness, and therefore when this wholeness is discovered, then he is always happy with himself. Here is the person who totally accepts himself. Here is the person who is totally comfortable with himself. We were talking about the discomfort that I usually have with my own self. How usually I am not quite happy with my own self. How I do not accept my own self. How very often I even reject or condemn myself. So human being is not able to accept himself. He is not able to love himself. He is not satisfied with himself, and that is the main problem with a human being. This is the inner conflict, and that is what is symbolized by this battlefield where this Bhagavad Gītā is being taught. There is a conflict that I have with my own self. This person is totally free from that conflict because he has discovered his true nature to be what he is, the wholeness or fullness. Tasya karyam na vidyate. There is nothing that he has to do. Not that he doesn't do anything. Lord Krishna does not say he does not do anything. But he is not compelled to do something. There is not something that he has to do. Even if he does not do anything, he is still a complete being. If he does something, then also he is a complete being. Doing or not doing does not in any way affect his wholeness or completeness. That alone is called wholeness, which cannot be added into or subtracted from, meaning that which is independent of its own. So tasya karyam na vidyate. Therefore him there nothing remains to be done, meaning there is no karya or a compulsion to do something. But does he do something? He may as well do. He may do much more than what we do. Because there is no stress now. See, whenever we do something, what is that creates stress? Because I have an agenda. So whenever I do something, I have a personal agenda. This person has totally become free from all personal agenda. Whenever I do something, my action generally represents a demand that I make from the world, that I do this, therefore I must be rewarded in this way. This person does without any demand for a reward. It is the reward part or the demand part is what causes stresses whenever we do things. The stress is not because we work, but stress is because from the work we have certain expectation that this work should produce a certain personal reward. Not only do I want that the action that I perform should produce a result, that is fine. Every action should produce a result. But along with what we call the result, which is a tangible or material result, I also want a subjective result. I want a reward for myself. I want some recognition. I want some ego gratification. I want some gratification I want. So whenever I do something, there is always a desire in my mind to get some gratification. And that is what causes anxiety in me, whether this work will bring about that gratification or not. In case I feel that it is not going to bring about gratification, I manipulate something so that gratification comes. That is where the compromise of values comes. We very often compromise the means for the sake of the end, because the end is very important to me. That gratification of my ego or gratification of my feelings is very important to me, and therefore that is how the means get compromised for the sake of the end. So this is what causes stress. So it's a very stressful society, only because we are so hung up with performance and so hung up with personal reward, and more hung up we are, more stressful it is going to be. This person does things but does not make any demand of any kind of personal reward from that. That's all. Therefore, he has no burden of doing anything. There is no stress at all. And when the stress is not there, we don't get worn out. We get worn out not merely by doing things at physical level. We get more worn out with the stresses, the emotional problems. He's totally free from that. So this is what we mean by freedom. The kind of freedom that Vedanta talks about is simply this freedom. Freedom from all the stresses. Freedom from all the burden, emotional problems. He is totally free. Tasya karyam na vidyate. Then nothing remains to be done for him. Naiva tasya krutena arthaha. There is nothing, no purpose here in this world for doing or not doing. That means that when he performs an action, there is no personal gain that he has. If he doesn't do something, there is nothing else to lose. So I do something because there is something to gain. I do something because otherwise I will have something to lose. But he has nothing to gain and nothing to lose. Nachasya sarvabhuteshu kasyadartha vyapashraya. There is nothing that he depends upon. There is nothing in the world upon which he depends. Which means that he is totally independent with reference. He doesn't need favor from anything in the world. There is nothing in the world, in all the three worlds, upon which or upon whom he depends upon some favor. That means that he is not seeking favor of anybody. So when we say he is not seeking favor of anybody, does not mean that he is indifferent to people. Doesn't mean that he doesn't care for anybody. He is not seeking favor of anybody. He does not demand that people should favor him. He does not demand that the world should favor him. He just does not make that kind of a demand. And when I make a demand that the world should favor me, then I always place myself in a condition of helplessness, because then I become dependent upon them to fulfill my demand. If they fulfill my demand, well and good. If they don't, then I get angry or frustrated. So all this anger and frustrations come because our demands are not fulfilled. This person doesn't make any demands because, as I said, he sees himself as a whole or a complete being, which is what you and I and everybody is. What's the difference in him and others is that he has just removed the obstacles which were clouding his wholeness. He just removed. How has he removed the obstacles? By living a way of life which is what we call yoga. There is a way of life called bhoga. That person was described earlier, Indriya Ramaha, one who is only devoted to sense pleasure. That's a life of bhoga, where we make that wholeness more and more clouded. This is life of yoga, where that wholeness becomes more and more evident. So that's all. We live a way of life which is conducive to the manifestation of the wholeness which is our own nature. And the end result is this, which is what we call moksha or freedom. And this person becomes totally free from the favor. He doesn't seek favor of anybody. He doesn't make demand from anybody. That means what? He always gives to everybody. Although they don't say that here, but that's what it amounts to. He is a giver because he is not a demander. So when I perform actions, they are always performed because I demand something as a reward for my actions. When this person performs actions, he does not demand. Therefore, every action is a blessing to the world. His very presence becomes a blessing. Is it not so? Don't we feel comfortable also with a person who doesn't make demand upon us? When we find that we are accepted as we are, I would request everybody to come forward a little bit. Would you please, all of you, so that the people who join us can also. Experience that we also feel comfortable in presence of somebody who doesn't make any demand upon us. When we find that we are accepted as we are, then we feel comfortable. Or to the extent that we are accepted, to that extent we are comfortable. So when I present myself before somebody and say, Swami, why have you shaven your head? Why don't you, I don't like. Why do you wear this kind of clothes? Why don't you change them? I don't want that somebody should demand that I should change or I should be different from what I am. If I am accepted as I am, then I feel comfortable. So everybody wants to be accepted. We feel comfortable when we are accepted. And we feel uncomfortable when there is a demand upon us. Here is a person who does not make any demand upon anybody. And therefore everybody is comfortable with him. The whole world is comfortable with him. And therefore he is a blessing to the whole world. So a person who is free and non-demanding automatically becomes a blessing. When it is said that he does not seek favor of anybody, which means that he does not make demands upon anybody. Because he can enjoy things as they are. He doesn't require to twist them and manipulate them and change them in order to make them enjoyable. He can enjoy them as they are. He can enjoy his life as it is. So really speaking, Lord Krishna is teaching us as to how to enjoy our life. Today the only way I can enjoy is when I turn around things to my liking. But when I have no liking, and then I can enjoy them as they are. So he is a person also who is able to enjoy the life. He is able to enjoy himself as is and enjoy the life as it is. This is the kind of picture of freedom that Vedanta presents before. There is nothing mysterious or mystical about it. It is very practical, very pragmatic. Not that he walks 6 feet, 6 inches above the ground, or Swamiji, when he becomes wise and he knows what's happening in my mind and things like that. He may, I do not know. But that's not required. Somebody asked Swamiji, do you know what's happening in my mind? I said, I have enough problem with what's happening in my mind if I am not interested in knowing what is happening in your mind. But we always associate spirituality with some of these kind of things, There's nothing wrong in them. Suppose you get these kind of additional powers, that's fine, you can enjoy them, but you don't need them necessarily to be happy. That's all we are saying. Lord Krishna does not describe any of those things. All he describes is what? What is meant by freedom. So this is a description of freedom. And this is simple. We can relate to this thing. If somebody says that freedom means upside down or something, I don't know how to relate to that. Freedom means something has to rise from bottom and go to the top and stuff like that. It may be all there, but I don't know how to relate to them. This is a freedom that we can relate to because it is something that is related to our day-to-day life, and we know how to and what to do in order to be someone like that. This is something that everybody can become. Because we can now, when we perform action, then we can always watch our mind. How the mind always, in a very subtle manner, is always calculating. And how it's always, what am I going to get out of that? The mind always is calculating. I should learn the methods of my mind, and I should deal with it, and I should work with it, and remind my mind, wait a minute, why do you ask for something? Why can't you perform an action just for the sake of performing? Why don't you do something for the love of doing it? Why do you do something for the love of what is the reward? So let us also understand our own mind, how the mind is always seeking the rewards, and slowly turn that around. And this is the person who has done it in its totality. And therefore in the 19th verse, Lord Krishna says, what should we do in order to become like that? It says here, Tasmadasaktas satatam karyam karma samachara asakto khyacharan karma paramapnoti purushah. Tasmad, therefore, satatam, always, karyam karma samachara, perform well the action that is to be done. Asaktaha, without attachment. Because asaktaha, by performing action without attachment, purusha paramapnodi, a person attains the highest. Therefore, always perform well the action that is to be done without attachment. This is Lord Krishna's prescription of how we should lead our day-to-day life. There are two things. Karyam karma. Karyam, that which is to be done. That which is proper to be done. This is what, in a given situation, there is a response that is expected out of me, and therefore, to the best of my ability, I respond to a situation in a way which is proper. That's called karyam karma. That's called the spirit of duty or the spirit of offering. Here Arjuna, therefore, may you perform as best as possible your actions in the spirit of offering, in the spirit of worship. Which spirit comes by recognition of the fact that, as we have been saying since last 2 days, it comes by recognition of the fact that already I am rewarded. Already I have been given plenty. Already I possess a lot. I need not look upon myself as a beggar. I can look at, what all I already have been given. A recognition of that fact will create in me a spirit of returning that favor. And therefore, as best as possible, may you perform your actions in the spirit of, with a sense of gratitude, in the spirit of returning the favor that you all been receiving. Recognize the grace that you are enjoying in the life. Recognize the privileges that you are already enjoying in your life. Recognize all the favors that have been already done to you and that are being done to you. Recognize that. Recognition of that will automatically create in me a spirit of returning that favor. It will create in me a sense of gratitude. A humility. Perform your actions with that humility, with a sense of gratitude, with a desire to be able to return that favor. This is what is called yajna. Samachara, samyak achara, do them well. Make sure that you perform every action well. Sometimes when you perform action for worship, then we don't always do it as well as we normally do. So worship. See, in India, when you perform pujas, often every month some puja is to be performed at home. Satyanarayana puja or something. So when this puja, meaning the rituals are performed, acts of worship are performed, then we make certain offerings to the Lord. And there are some betel nuts and there are certain things that you offer them. So when we go for shopping and ask for betel nuts, the shopkeeper will ask us, you want betel nut for what? Do you want betel nut for offering for puja? Or do you want betel nut for your own use? If you want for own use, then here are these. They will cost you 10 for 1 rupee. If you want for puja, here are these. You can get 50 for 1 rupee, Means that when it comes to offering to the Lord, people usually find cheap stuff, because it's going to the Lord anyway. When I'm doing vacuum in my own home, I do it in a certain way with care. When I'm doing here in the temple, I finish it up. People sweep the floor in the temple, all the dust and things are all under the rug. Doesn't matter. After all, it is work done for ashram and temple, So when we do things for ourselves, then we take some kind of a care. When we do it for others, sometimes we are not as particular or as careful as otherwise we are. Very often, when I do my room, so I'm a housekeeper. When I'm doing somebody else's room, I do it in one way. When I do my own room, I do it in a different way. Very often we're not as thorough, as not dedicated, as not committed, not as devoted when we do things for others or in the spirit of worship, or in the spirit of offering. Sometimes. Lord Krishna says, samachara, do them well. Whatever you do them well. As though you are doing it for yourself. And do it with the spirit of offering. Asaktaha, and also unattached to the rewards. So this is a very demanding thing. To perform action without expectation of personal reward is not easy at all. Not easy. Because ours is the mind is insecure. Mind feels, and therefore an insecure mind is always seeking security. A mind that feels beggarly always wants some rewards. And therefore it is not easy to perform actions without demanding some personal reward. That is why they said, all right, if you cannot do all your actions that way, perform a few actions like that to begin, just a few. That is why we have these acts of what we call worship, rituals and things like that. That in our home we have an altar where we perform every day some acts of worship. When we make offering to the Lord, at least those actions we can perform without demanding. Even that also we don't perform. When we perform rituals at home and make some offerings to the Lord, there also I make a contract with the Lord. That look, I'm giving you this, I expect something from you. Nothing wrong in it. That is also okay. But Lord Krishna would like that at least we perform some actions without demanding rewards. He would like that we perform action for the love of action itself. He would like that the action itself should become the reward. Suppose the action itself is reward. Suppose I enjoy the action itself, then would it be important to me what the reward is? The reward is nothing but the gratification. Suppose I am gratified by the very act of performing the action, then so this is what Lord Krishna wants, to shift the focus of gratification. So rather than depending upon the reward, waiting for the reward to come and make me happy. Why not? The action itself makes me happy. Because action is something that is within my control. Reward is not control. And therefore, whenever my satisfaction or gratitude, happiness is related to reward, it is something uncertain. On the other hand, when my happiness comes from the action itself, it is certain. So that is karma yoga. Happiness everybody wants. Mind always wants gratification. There is nothing wrong in it. Only Lord Krishna is teaching us where to get the gratification from. So normally people are seeking gratification from the rewards. Lord Krishna says, find the gratification from the action. And slowly find the gratification from yourself. When you have done that, that is it. So in the previous two verses, Lord Krishna described a person who ultimately finds gratification from his own self. Before that, we find gratification from thinking about God. And before that, we find gratification from worshipping God. Before that, we find gratification from rewards from the God, So gratification from the reward. Shift that to gratification from action. Shift that to gratification from worship. Shift that from gratification to meditation, not thinking of the Lord. And shift that to gratification from my own self. This is how slowly our focus of gratification changes, and ultimately one discovers gratification from one's own self. The important thing is the spirit of non-demanding spirit, asakta, detachment, meaning non-demanding. Asakto hyacharan karma, because when a person performs an action as unattached, without attachment to the result, paramapnoti purusha, that purusha, the person, attains param, or the highest. Thus in Bhagavad Gītā, Lord Krishna presents anasakti, detachment or unattachment, as a very vehicle of attaining the ultimate goal in our life. To begin with, become unattached to the reward, then become unattached to the action, then become unattached to the actor. This is how the degrees of unattachment, and one attains the param or highest. Thus in all these 19 verses, Lord Krishna has given the teaching of the karma yoga. And now here comes a section that specifically applies to Arjuna. Lord Krishna has been teaching in all this as to why Arjuna should not give up the action. He is not yet ready to renounce the action. When he becomes ready to renounce action, fine, he can renounce, but at this time Arjuna does not enjoy that inner purification or emotional maturity that is required for renouncing the action. And number of reasons have been given, and how to go about all of this has been taught. Now Lord Krishna says to Arjuna that, hey Arjuna, this is another reason why you should not renounce action, because you are a special person. Arjuna is a very special person, and therefore his giving of the action is going to affect a number of other people. So if you are ordinary people, then it doesn't matter whether I do something or not, then fine, I can follow the course of my life. But when I am an important person, then what I do has an impact on others, then I must take that also into account. So Lord Krishna says, hey Arjuna, you should not renounce action because you are an important person, and therefore what you do will impact a large section of the society, and therefore you must take that also into account whenever you make a decision about renouncing action. And so that is what also Lord Krishna says in the next section. So let us read the 20th verse. Karmanaiva hi samsiddhim asthita janakadayah लोकसंग्रहमेवापि संपश्यन् कर्तुमर्हसि. कर्मणा एव हि संसिद्धिम आस्थिताः जनकादयः. He indeed, कर्मणा एव, by action alone, जनकादयः, Janaka and others, samsiddhim आस्थिताः, gained liberation. Indeed, by action alone, Janaka and others gained liberation. This name of Janaka is well known to the people who have grown in the Vedic tradition. Janaka is very famous. He was the father of Sita, very famous. Also, he is very famous as the wise man. He was called Janaka Videha, Videha Janaka. Videha means one who is without the body. That means one who is free from the identification of the body. So Janaka is presented as an ideal person who was a king, who was an emperor, and therefore doing all the work that was required to be done to run the whole empire, and still he was always detached because he had no identification at all, and he remained free in spite of doing all that he was required to do. About King Janaka, there is an interesting event, which is also very famous in fact, which you may have heard, is one great sage once came. King Janaka was very fond, was himself a very learned person and very fond of learned people. So in his own court there were many learned people, and other learned people would come and he would have dialogues and discussions with them. So one such learned person was there, a sage was there, Ashtavakra his name was, and this sage Ashtavakra lived in the kingdom of King Janaka for a period of time. And every morning then they would have these classes going on. They were out on the outskirts of his city. On the, I guess there was a river on the other side, These classes were all going on. Early morning King Janaka would go there, and many other sages and other people would come there, and this sage would be taking the class. One day these people complained, other people who are attending classes, other sadhus, other renunciates and sadhus and sages who must have been attending the class, they thought that this sage Ashtavakra, the teacher, was a bit partial looking Janaka. So you're always looking at him, looks like, and you're not looking at us. This is a very standard thing, very standard problem. But, one of the problems that the teachers and the students have is this, that very often students feel that the teacher is not looking at us. He's only looking there, not looking at us, and therefore he's partial to some student. These are all the emotional things are there. But anyway, so it was there also. Some people complain to sage Ashtavakra that, look, you seem to be partial looking Janaka. Oh, is it because he is a king, he is an emperor? That also is what happens. There is a big donor, so naturally you will look there more, it's quite possible. So then they were wondering whether or not this sage Ashtavakra appeared to be paying more attention, to King Janaka. Sage Ashtavakra did not say anything. He just heard. After a few days, when the class was similarly going on, all of a sudden, these people, when they were attending the class, there were huge flames in the city of Videha, Janaka, and they all saw the city was in flames. This was the city that belonged to King Janaka. And King Janaka was unmoved. All the other fellows, other renunciates, all of them ran, there. Because they had some kaupina, some stuff, that they had to save, and they all ran there to save their property. What property? There were a couple of pairs of clothes, but anyway, they were all concerned. And then they all came back after 1 hour or so, discovering that it was just a hoax. In fact, there was no fire. There was just only an appearance of fire. They all came back. And they saw that King Janaka was unmoved. He did not move at all. He says, how come? This whole city was burning. How can you sit, unconcerned here? He says, well, when the city of Mithila is burning, nothing of mine is burning. It's not mine. I have nothing to do with it. When I am here, I am here. That's how sage Ashtavakra taught lessons to all the fellows. In case it appears that I am favoring him, there is a reason, because he deserves that. You see, even though he is a king, and he possesses all of this, but still he is totally free from a sense of possession. So this is how King Janaka is well known to all the Indian people. Of course, he was a king, he was a Kshatriya, and therefore much well known to Arjuna also. So therefore Lord Krishna here quotes the example of King Janaka and other kings like him who were wise people. They were like what we call the royal sages. They are called Rajarshis. The Raja, they are kings, as well as Rishis, the sages. You can call them royal sages. You can imagine a person remaining totally detached or free from sense of doership while running his whole kingdom. So King Janaka becomes ideal for people like Arjuna. And therefore Lord Krishna quotes here the example of King Janaka. Hey Arjuna, look, Janaka and others like him, they are known to be liberated people. They gained their liberation. Do you know how they gained their liberation? Through action alone. So now, in order to support his stand that Arjuna should not renounce the action, Lord Krishna presents the example of King Janaka. Look, King Janaka was a liberated sage. And how did he get liberated? How did he gain the knowledge? Through action alone. And therefore, you can also do that. That means you also should not give up your action, continue to perform the action, and you can, like King Janaka, also become liberated. Karmana eva. See, karmana is the third case of the word karman. It is an instrumental case, therefore, karmana eva, through the agency of action. Through action, he attained liberation. But then, you see, in Sanskrit, there are certain words that govern certain cases. So there is a word which is called saha. Saha means together. So whenever you use that word saha, together, then that word also governs third case. So karmana also can mean karmana saha, along with action. See, word karmana can mean through action, or word karmana can mean karmana saha, along with action. Look, even when King Janaka was liberated, he still did not give up the action. Along with action, he was liberated. That means that for King Janaka, action was a means of liberation, and after being liberated also, he continued to perform the action. Therefore, Arjuna, if you think that you want to be liberated, then perform the action. If you think that you are liberated, then also perform the action, taking the lesson from King Janaka. Why should I do that? Suppose King Janaka did it. He did not know what he was doing. Why should I follow his lesson? So Lord Krishna says, Loka sangraham evapi sampashyan kartum arhasi. Loka sangraham evapi sampashyan. By seeing the desirability of loka sangraha. That's the technical word, loka sangraha. The translation is protecting the people from falling into unbecoming ways. That's the translation. Protecting the people from falling into unbecoming ways. This falling into unbecoming ways is something that happens. Because there are always some temptations in there. Some of those temptations are there, and if I am not vigilant, then it happens that my temptations slowly take over me and they govern what I do. When I am vigilant, it is fine. When I decided, I am going to exercise every morning, yogasana, 45 minutes every morning, vigilant. Alarm clock, 5 o'clock, and that went on for about 10 days. And slowly, 11th day, 45 minutes, 40 minutes, 35 minutes. That temptation to sleep a little longer, not to give the comfort of the bed, that temptation slowly took over me, and in about 3 weeks or so, the yoga vanished completely. Arambha Shura, we start with great enthusiasm and slowly. So this dharma, following a life of righteousness, is a very demanding way of life. It is not easy to be righteous. It is not easy to be honest. It is not easy to be truthful. It is not easy at all that we perform our duties, because performing duty also is a very demanding thing. In short, living a mature way of life is a very demanding way of life. Living a life where there is an awareness for spiritual growth is a very demanding life. It requires me to be vigilant. It constantly requires me to be disciplined. It requires me that I must keep under check my temptations and all those tendencies that I must always do. And this becomes easier when there are other people also are doing that. Then it becomes easier. So if we live in Gurukulam where there are a number of seekers who are living that way of life, then we also do that. If I then take a vacation from Gurukulam and go someplace else and so forth, where then I am in company with the people who have no value for that, then my enthusiasm of being vigilant and being disciplined as slowly wanes, and I also start falling in those ways. This is called falling into unbecoming way. It is very easy for a person to fall into unbecoming ways. I did not drink tea, but then my friends were drinking tea and coffee. Oh, I also joined them. I never smoked, but I thought, let's try how it is. This is how slowly a person falls into unbecoming ways. And therefore, we always require a role model so that we can remain in becoming ways. We also require someone who can check us and control us, and discipline us also. We require that. In fact, the whole population requires that. And that is a role that a king plays. A king becomes a role model for the subjects. At the same time, it is his duty to make sure that all the subjects are on the right track. Nigraha and Anugraha. He will reward all those who are on the right track, and he will punish those who are falling off the track. Because that is what will sustain the harmony in the kingdom. So that is called Loka Sangraha. Encouraging people to be on the good track, at the same time bringing back the people who have fallen into unbecoming track, bringing them back to the right track. This is the duty of a king. That's called Loka Sangraha. That is called protecting the people. Loka Sangraha mevapi sampashyan kartumarhasi. Here Arjuna, even if you do not need to do anything for yourself, suppose you have become a perfected person and therefore you tasya karyam na vidyate, that does not remain anything for you to do for yourself. Understand that then there is something waiting for you to do. Lord Krishna says, hey Arjuna, if you have no plan for yourself, then I have planned for you. So Swami used to ask us, when we finished our course, Swami used to, do you have any plan for yourself? So no Swami, I have planned for you. So Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, if Arjuna says that I have no plan now, then why should I do anything? If you have no plan for yourself, I have planned for you. What is it? I want that you should keep all these people on the track. Never. Do your work. Loka sangrahamevapi sampashyan kartumarhasi. And therefore, it is proper for you to continue to perform the action as a king so that you become a role model for the people, or you do the duty and keeping people on the track, because then alone they'll be happy. A person can be happy only when he follows the righteous ways of life. Person cannot be happy by compromising or by violating the righteous ways. This is a firm belief, and that being the case, it is for the sake of their happiness that you should make sure that they are on the right track. And for that, you must exercise your authority as well as exercise, your good offices to make sure that that happens. And therefore, even if you do not have anything to accomplish for yourself, you must continue to perform action for the sake of other people. But what does it matter what I do, Arjuna says. Suppose I live a righteous way of life, so what? What does it matter? Lord Krishna says, it matters. In what way does it matter? He says in the verse 21, Yadyadacharati shresthaha tattadevetaro janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokastadanu vartate. Yet, this is a very famous verse, very often quoted in the management seminars also. In the what Bhagavad Gītā has to say with reference to leadership. So this is one verse that Vedantic teachers find from Bhagavad Gītā to quote for leadership. Yet acharati shresthaha. Shresthaha, translated here as an important person. That's an interesting translation. Shrestha means a leader, actually. Shrestha means an exalted person, the best person, a leader. But deliberately translation here is an important person, so that this verse can be applicable to everybody. Otherwise this verse would have been applicable only to people who enjoy the position of leadership. Yet acharati shrestha, whatever a person enjoying the position of leadership, whatever that person does, tattadeva itaro janaha, that is what other persons do. Idea is that ordinary people always follow. what the leaders do. Because mostly people cannot think of what they should do. Most people do not have that kind of an education. Most people do not have that kind of an understanding of life, or they may not have that insight in the life also. And therefore, most people may not be in a position to decide what is best for them. And therefore, how do I decide how I should conduct myself? I look up to someone who is important to me, whom I respect, and I follow what that person does. Say, Arjuna, this is a tendency that people in general have, that whenever they do something, they always look up to somebody, and in conducting their life, they always follow somebody. Most people are followers. There are very few leaders. So most people are followers. And therefore, when a person occupies a position of leadership, it becomes a very responsible position, because then it becomes very important that that person conducts himself in a proper way, because many people are looking up to him. And therefore, he has no freedom. That way, he has no freedom to do what he fancies to do. He is necessarily required to do that which is right to do, which is proper to do. That is his responsibility. Here, Arjuna, you are in a position of leadership. Arjuna was a very famous person. Of course, he was a great leader also. He was the commander-in-chief here. And therefore, other warriors, other Kshatriyas, always will look up to Arjuna and will follow him. Arjuna, at this time, if you get away from this battlefield, then rest of the people, other people will think that that's the way to do. So when you are in battlefield, Arjuna did this, so we also do that. And therefore, they will also give up their post of duty. But the general rule is, whatever a leader does, this is what other people do. Not only that, Sayat, but then why do you have to follow somebody? Why can't they study the scriptures themselves and find out what is right and what is wrong? He says, no, most people do not have that ability also. Sayat pramanam kurude lokas tadanuvartate. Whatever that person sets as proper, the world people follows. People follow. So when it comes to my beliefs also, I generally follow the belief of the person who is important to me. In two ways I follow the important people or the leaders. In doing what I do, I follow what they do. In believing what I believe, I follow what they believe. So when Mahatma Gandhi says that whenever I have a problem in my life, I always go back to Gītā and always find solution from. This is the statement that he made. That in every critical condition in my life, and there were millions of critical conditions in his life, so whenever I am in need of direction or guidance, I go to Bhagavad Gītā and I am never disappointed. I always find guidance. When he says that is very important. Then the people of the country also will feel that whenever they have a problem, they should also go back to Gītā. So when someone like Mahatma Gandhi, who enjoys the position of leadership and reverence and whatever, when he gives pravanyam, he gives validity to something like Bhagavad Gītā, then automatically other people also will look upon Bhagavad Gītā with that kind of reverence. Mahatma Gandhi says that whenever I'm not happy, whenever I feel that what somebody has done is not right, then rather than punishing that person, I rather not punish myself, but I rather sacrifice myself. Therefore, all right, I will suffer. I will observe a fast for one day on account of what that person did. Suppose that is a method that he followed. Other people feel that is a method. Normally the method is to punish the other fellow. He says, no, not punishing him, but converting him. That it is not that he wants to put some pressure on that person, but he wants to make him understand that I care for you. I care for what you do, and that's the reason why I think that what you do is not good for you, and therefore I undertake this fast in order that good comes to you. So that's the spirit. So thus, this is a spirit of self-sacrifice. Then people will feel that that's the way to do. So the idea is that whenever a person enjoying the position of leadership, enjoying position of importance, enjoying position of respect or reverence, Whatever that person does, others will follow. And whatever he looks upon as pramanam or as the valid means of knowledge or authority, that is what other people also will do. That, and Arjuna, you are in the position of leadership. Therefore, what you do is important not only for you but for many others who look up to you. And what you believe is important not only for you but for many people who look up to you. Here, the translation of the word Shrestha is important person. Inasmuch as each one of us is an important person for somebody. A father is an important person for the child. Parents are very important persons for the children. Until they become big enough and understand the realities of life, until then. Then they understand their parents well enough and then they help them. But until then, when they are small, then the parents are like God. My dad can, you sometimes you hear the dialogue among the little children. You know something? My dad is driving at 75 miles an hour. My dad is driving at 87 miles an hour. Other child. My dad has done this and my dad has done this. My mom has done this. So for this little child, mom and dad are like gods. Now, it's a privilege to enjoy that position, but that brings in a lot of responsibility because my child is watching me all the time. We think that the child does not understand much, but it understands in its own way. It is constantly watching what the father or the mother are doing, what they are talking, how they behave with each other, how they treat each other, and whatever else they do. And that is what the child learns. The father is an angry person, the child also grows to be an angry person. Father is a kind of loving person, the child grows to be a loving person. This is observed very often. So Lord Krishna says that everybody is an important person for somebody. And therefore, everybody has a responsibility that they should conduct themselves in a responsible way. And that also, they should hold the views which are also mature or responsible views. Therefore, the translation is important person. So yet, Arjuna, this is another reason why you should not renounce action. Because you are an important person. That being the case, what you do is important not only for you, but for many people who look up to you. Then you set an example. So sometimes people ask this question, Swamiji, how to make people understand? How to teach them? Then the answer is by setting an example. The best way to communicate is to set an example. The words are fine. Of course we communicate through words. But the most effective way of communicating something is by setting an example. So Lord Krishna says, hey Arjuna, you being the leader or an important person must set an example for others, and therefore you should not renounce the action. So number of reasons Lord Krishna is giving to Arjuna as to why he should not renounce the action. Alright, we shall conclude this class here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah. Ishvaro Gururatmedi Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavadvyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.